My name is Richard August. I'll be your host. Our guest is Governor Dan McKee, who has announced for re-election in 2026. Welcome, Governor.
Well, thank you so much for the invite, Richard. It's great to be here.
We want to talk about your RI 2030 plan. That's kind of the centerpiece of your re-election campaign. But with your permission, I'd like to kind of talk about a few current events that may be a little controversial.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Controversial, what's that?
Well, yeah, I know. You don't know. I'm familiar with controversy, yeah. I'm sure. Well, on February 22nd, you released a statement that said that you did not want the Rhode Island State Police to cooperate with U.S. Immigration and Customs on arresting anyone in the country illegally, and if ICE had a warrant out for the arrest of someone who committed a crime of violence, do you really mean that you don't want the state police to, or?
Yeah, I don't know where that quote comes because I can't recall us saying it, and I certainly didn't release a statement like that. The position that we've taken on that is consistent since I've been governor. That one is we're not going to profile people, which is against the law.
Right.
But if we're notified that somebody with a warrant needs to be detained, we're going to detain them, and we certainly want to work with ICE to do that. Now, without a warrant, there's federal rulings by courts that says that we can't hold somebody without a warrant. So just to detain I think it's a Morales case, I believe it is, puts us in a spot where we can't just hold somebody on a call. But if there is a warrant, we would. So I'm not sure exactly where that quote came from. I'm finding some people are putting quotes out there in the news, and then they're attaching my name to it. It happened just recently last week, so I'm not sure. I don't think that represents. We are working with ICE when there's a warrant. We have made sure that we notify ICE, for instance, and we have done this in the past, when somebody the courts let somebody go that we think should be detained, we have called ICE and said, look, the court is going to let this person go on such and such a time frame. We want to notify you so that if you wanted to come down and detain them or pick them up, then they could do that.
So maybe I'll refresh your recollection on this. The specific case involved a man from Guatemala, Manuel Garcia de la Cruz, who was arrested by Providence Police Department and charged with child molestation. When he went to court, and I'm looking at actually a statement that did it come out on Channel 12 or Channel 10, one of their sites, their feeds, that the court ordered bail for this gentleman, and ICE apparently contacted the state, I don't know if it was the state police or the marshal's department, and said, we got a deportation order for him, please hold him till we can get there. And the rationale for releasing this man was, well, you didn't have ICE down here, so we had to let him go because he's on bail. And you know, child molestation is bad enough, but the fact that the person's here illegally and there's a deportation, seems to me he should have been held, but he was released.
So again, we have to follow the law, and it says if there's not a warrant and if someone is released, we notify ICE when somebody's being released. So I would think that we probably made the notification to ICE that the courts were going to let this guy out on bail. Yeah. That would be, I would believe that's what we've done. I know corrections does that quite often. So we're working with ICE. We're certainly not trying to avoid, if we got criminals or we got people who have behavior that is really atrocious behavior, we want them out of here. We don't want them in here. So we don't want them. But at the same point in time, we're not going to profile your family or my family or anybody else's family as you know, sometimes happens, right? So we are cooperating with ICE. I mean, there's been quotes there saying that if you know, that's been in the paper, or you know, not in the paper, but social media, that I said if our state police you know, works with ICE, then they can hand in their badge. I've never said that. So I think that is really important to verify all the conditions, and I'm trying to explain it as best I can.
Okay. I think we all agree that we don't need people who are going around molesting children to remain and walk in the streets, and you know, it's,
Yeah, and I think that if there's like an issue to take, it's that the courts were in a position where they provided bail, right? And then at that point in time, if there's not a warrant,
yeah, we can walk out.
we have no choice. Otherwise, we break the law, and then we get ourselves in trouble with by overstepping our bounds.
Certainly, ACLU would be involved.
Well, you see, the courts will be too. So,
Yeah.
I mean, the point is, again, and I've said this multiple times, it's worth repeating, look, we're not going to profile people. That's not illegal. But we are going to cooperate when there's criminals here, and we are working with ICE to take them out of our community when we have the ability to do it.
Okay. In January, during your State of the State address, you announced that your budget would include an amendment banning so-called assault weapons. And the legislative reaction to that, including the Speaker of the House and the Chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, said that they regarded this as an end around the legislative process. In fact, I was told by the head of the Chairman of Judiciary that that was going to be automatically stripped out of your budget proposal. It's not appropriate to put that in a financial thing. So I guess I'm wondering why you took that route with that particular issue.
Well, I think it was a good way to signal in that I thought it was, within the best interest of the safety of the state of Rhode Island to have a bill that stopped the sale of assault weapons in the state. We knew that was going to not be moved into the General Assembly. It's happened to us before, Richard. We put in, I can't exactly recall what we put into the budget, but then they move it into legislation. Mm-hmm. And to the Speaker's credit, at the time the Senate President Dominic Ruggiero, they want to vet these things in committee, and so I think that's more than appropriate, and we anticipated that that's exactly what's going to happen. There has been hearings now. People who are for it were there. People who are against it were there, and now it's up to the General Assembly to decide whether or not they're going to move ahead with it or not.
So it was a way of you signaling the importance you attach to the issue?
Yeah, I think you use your office for bully pulpit issues, to really make a point. And I think that it was a point that is, that is shared by the majority of the people in the state. We certainly have a lot of pushback on that. One of those areas that, we have to agree to disagree on issues. But yes, I think it was an important thing to say publicly that this should be the year to do it. Time will tell whether it is or not. But I think that it was a good statement to be making in my State of the State address. And I can understand the General Assembly. We don't want to be overstepping the bounds of what the General Assembly can do. They clearly appropriate dollars. I don't think any of us have the ability to appropriate dollars that are not appropriated. And so we have a good relationship with the General Assembly. We know there's a distinction between our office, executive branch, their duties as legislators, and of course the courts are our third branch of government that we certainly honor and respect.
In that regard, we had Representative Jason Knight on the program shortly after your budget presentation, and I asked him whether or not he would support a bill that contained unconstitutional aspects. For example, Massachusetts passed a very comprehensive gun control, I think it was 160 pages, and the legislators who supported it said they knew it was unconstitutional, but they didn't care because it was going to take so long to go through the courts. Representative Knight said at that point that, he wasn't very specific about his answer, but then he was a prime sponsor of the bill that's being considered. And he turned around and said, when he announced it, that he recognized that some aspects of the bill are unconstitutional. Secretary of State Amore was on after that, and as you know, along with the other general officers, Secretary Amore came out in support of an assault weapons ban. But he said to me on this program that if the bill contained or included these unconstitutional aspects, that he would come out against the bill. And that seems to follow because all general officers and state legislators take the same oath. They're going to defend the Constitution, right? So I guess my question would be, if the sponsor of the legislation says aspects of it are unconstitutional, and yet gets through the General Assembly, will you support a bill that you know contains unconstitutional provisions?
So if I believe it's unconstitutional, I'm not going to sign it, Richard. So probably, more likely than not, anything that comes to the desk would veto something that's unconstitutional. I think that the framework that they put it in now, I think that they've addressed a couple of things that might be in a gray area, which is their job, right? We've been brought to court on some of the gun legislation that was passed a few years ago that I did sign, and the courts upheld the legislation as being constitutional. So, yeah, you don't want to get into a fight where if you knowingly approve something that's unconstitutional, we respect the Constitution. I think that even when the bill gets on that particular situation on the assault weapon ban of sales comes to my desk, I think that it'll be in a form that is very, is a constitution and it's appropriate for me to sign.
Well, I certainly hope so, because it would seem to go against the oath that you all take. So I'm not even sure how it would get that far, but
I think I think that if something is outside the gray area, is clearly unconstitutional, I think that you got to take a stand on that, even though you kind of support the basic concept. But I'm confident that if the bill does get to my desk, I know it's being vetted, and that's what we expected it through committee and through hearings, that it would be amended to make sure that it withstood any type of challenge.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I've asked many people that have come on this program regarding any kind of a gun control legislation is it always seems to exempt retired police officers. And I asked a simple question: why does a retired police officer need an assault weapon? And nobody seems to have an answer for that. I know what the answer is, because I recall when it was first proposed by, I think it was Representative Aiello from Providence. She introduced it, and I was at the hearing, and the Rhode Island Association of Chiefs of Police came out and opposed the ban. When they were asked why, they said because it doesn't exempt retired police officers. Chairman of the committee looked at Representative Aiello and said, why don't you amend the bill? So my question still stands: why does a retired police officer need an assault weapon if we believe that these are more lethal, or whatever the rationale is for banning them?
Well, I'm a big supporter of public safety and our police in particular. I believe it's important that we bring our communities and our public safety together, whether state police or local police. And I really believe that the training that the police have, they certainly are working on public safety. So extending that courtesy to them in any way, they have certain ability to carry, right, in a way. So we extend that. We believe that public safety is in their blood, and that they're people that we can trust.
Okay. I still have a difficult with that idea, because they certainly have no more rights than I do once they retire. They can't arrest anybody or anything else. They are retired police officers. I understand what you're saying about the training part of it. You proposed a budget. I want to get to the budget issue now. This is really important, because you proposed a budget for 2026 of $14.2 billion. And again, we've had guests on the program from both sides of the legislative aisle back when the COVID cash started pouring in, and they said they were pretty much concerned that when this source of funds, extraordinary funds, dries up, it was going to become the baseline for the budget. And I guess we certainly look at a budget now. The COVID money is pretty much gone, and yet a budget of 14.2 is being proposed. Your budget officer, Joe Cadega, said that the expected growth in revenues is 2.5%, where the growth in costs or expenses is 3.7%. Yep. Where's this money going to come from to pay all these?
Yeah, so that was another line in my State of the State, where it was a cautionary to the General Assembly. Look, this is what our revenue is growing at, this is what our expenses are growing at, and it's a math problem. Mm-hmm. And so the budget that we've presented I've presented now 5 budgets. have no broad-based tax increases in those budgets. Last year's budget, what we presented and what we got back, actually, some of the programs that got accelerated actually expanded that structural deficit. So this year's budget is a effort to make sure that we don't raise taxes, but at the same time balance the budget. What we've put in, if it's passed as we've put it in, and with the new revenue projections that came in May of about $80 million gross dollars more than what we had to work with in November, there's a path to basically not raise taxes and balance the budget in a way that I can manage it so that that we're not really creating a structural deficit long term. We got to figure out how to reduce that down. Yes, I agree that a lot of the number of the COVID dollars are still baked into some of the things that are happening. A lot of our school districts, where we held harmless our school districts on student count for 3 years and made sure that they received the same amount or more dollars every year, but with understanding that when the dollars actually could no longer be appropriated, that they're going to have to manage based on that student count. And we have a number of school districts right now. Student counts come down. We've made the adjustment. So I think there is a spot, not only municipal level, the state level, where we got to rebalance our thinking a little bit. But at the same point in time, that $14 billion has not really increased significantly since I've been governor. And we've been able to manage the budget in a way where we're not in the red. We're actually in the black in terms of what we've been managing. We just need to make sure that the budgets that get passed are disciplined going forward, because you're absolutely right, they're a lot more constrained than they were during a time frame when we were trying to make sure that we didn't go into a recession, we didn't have a big economic problem, and we were spending dollars in a way that I think that made sense. And we'll talk about the 2030 plan shortly, but about how we're expending those dollars and how we're getting actually value of them, right? Yeah, value from those dollars. So.
And you pointed out public school enrollment actually statewide is declining, and yet the budget that you've proposed spends $43.4 million more than last year. So if the student populations are going down, yet we're spending another $43 million, what are we spending the money on? I mean, it costs a lot of money to supposedly educate a public school student, yet the test scores don't show that at all.
Yeah, well, one of the things, since I've been governor, just to let you know, Richard, we've closed the gap as we set a goal to meet or exceed Massachusetts levels by 2030. We've closed the gap. This is something I've been on the state of the state here for years back, talking about the various things you just talked about. We've closed the reading gap between us and Massachusetts by 34% since I've been governor, math by 18%. We're ready to go into a real strong math matters program to kind of upskill the outcomes there. Look, I happen to believe that the state has a responsibility to fund public education. When I was a mayor, we had a governor that reduced the funding significantly to the local communities, which put a tremendous amount of pressure on the local communities to fund their schools in a way where they were keeping up with their contracts and keeping up with their responsibilities. I've made a real effort not to just have the budget issues that we're dealing with negatively impact our municipalities. And so, yeah, we are increasing our funding. It's all based on the funding formula that's in place. It's based on some of the rules that we have in terms of if there's poor students, students that are coming from some level of economic challenging situations, there's more dollars put there. We also know that we have a second language issue, that we need to get people to really understand how to communicate in English, and so that's costing a little bit more money than in the past. But these are investments we're making that we're going to get good results on. I do believe that we will meet Massachusetts levels by 2030, and if we're able to continue to close the gaps at the rate that we are right now. Attendance Matters program was a fabulous incentive, to bring in municipal leaders, state leaders, business leaders, school leaders, teachers, students, you know, really emphasizing that we really need you in school. And coming out of COVID, the student attendance was really down significantly, which is only going to impact our outcomes. So all in, we're investing in education. I'm going to continue to do that, just like I did in. There was no cybersecurity school at Rhode Island College when I came in. Now you got a cybersecurity school. We're tracking to put 1,000 kids in that school over there, and the taxpayers approved to put a new building there, a retrofitted building. Congressman Langevin doing that. There was no life science hub down at URI. We're going to be building a building there. There was no investment in many years on the Bay campus. I am putting a lot in the budgets to support education, not only on CCRI this year. We're going to, hopefully they're going to put a culinary expansion down in the Newport campus of CCRI. We're training young people to go to electric boat with more CTE programs. That's another thing. We have over 300 CTE programs that has expanded exponentially since I've been governor, so that there's tracking for young kids to reach their potential, but then end up with a path if they want to go into the trades. There's a path that we're setting up for them. So we are investing, I think, wisely, and I'm going to continue to be very aggressive in helping young people reach their potential, but also give them opportunity. There was no Hope Scholarship when I showed up, right? If you're on a 4-year track now at Rhode Island College and you're at a 2.5 cum, the junior, senior year, the tuition is covered. Yeah. That's really important for us on graduation rates and actually graduating people and then increasing our education quotients in the state, which I know, and everybody does agree that our incomes are going to increase by the work that we're doing.
The Hope Scholarship also applies to, if you go directly to CCRI from high school, that can be tuition free as well, right?
Yeah, that's a different program, but it is set up, the College Promise.
Yeah.
And when I came into office, it was sunsetting, and I extended that because it's been a very successful program, and providing a good path to families that are, that they need that help for their kids, but also a great path for families to have a 2-year degree and then transfer over at Bryant or transfer into URI or Brown or whatever. Yeah. So it does give them a great opportunity, and we're seeing the results of that right now in terms of the incomes that are increasing. I think very shortly we're going to show another bond upgrade in our state, which I've been. I had 8 bond upgrades when I was a mayor. I've already had 2 bond upgrades since I've been governor. So we really are focused on the finances because they're really important. But there's nothing more important than we can do to be smart about investing in our education. And I'll just add one more thing that I want your listeners to know, that our Learn 365 plan, which is part of our 2030 plan. Mm-hmm. It says that in every home, every day, learning matters. We did the Attendance Matters, which I just told you, but brought up hundreds of thousands of more school days as a result of that campaign. We're doing Math Matters now, kicking it off very shortly with a plan. But we're going to have, and I remember recalling that I opened up an Office for Children, Youth, and Learning when I was a mayor by statute. It's the only one of its kind in the country. We're going to have 22 of those opening up. They're in construction right now in 22 communities in the state of Rhode Island. So that about 85% of the state's population will be within a 15-minute ride. And we have 5-year commitments from all the municipal leaders except for one to actually provide learning, earnings, and health. And we're going to help them fill that content. But to have that massive amount of year-round strategies on learning is going to be really key for us.
Which one is the one that's you just accepted?
Oh, I don't want to say that one. But
well, the people who live there.
Well, I tell you, it's Johnston, and they give up millions of dollars because we're not only putting out grants to the communities in I was a mayor. So I signed compacts with 38 communities to help us achieve these goals that we've set about being the best in the country. And then we have grants that are going to all these communities. I've staffed up my office with education innovators, 2 of them, to work with RIDE on a regular basis. We're providing grants to all these communities, and they are actually putting in programs under our guidance that help their communities use out-of-school time frames, right, out of school, to support what happens inside the schools.
Well, I'll turn quickly. We should have had you on for an hour, Governor, but one of the problems that you recognize is a shortage of primary care physicians. It's not getting any better. And now even some specialists are hanging up the thing and saying they don't get enough reimbursement from Medicare. I've spoken to several doctors. What's the basic problem here? Medicare was passed in 1965. Population in the United States was a little over 194 million. Rhode Island's population was a little under 900,000. Now the population of the United States is almost 342 million by census projections, and we are at 1.1 million. So what's happened is, because the Medicare pie is split up based on population, is that our piece of the pie keeps getting smaller and smaller because our population isn't growing. And the states that have growing populations don't want to surrender any of their power, and they would have to surrender some of their money to give us more. And as long as we don't have more, it seems to me it's a rather high priority to have primary care available, especially as our population ages. And I know many of my friends have experienced this. They can't find a doctor. They have to go to a PA or a nurse practitioner.
Yeah, so we know it's a national problem. That's a good example as any. What you just talked about in terms of the fact that there's a demand for docs, around the country, and our population has not grown as fast as other population. I have to kind of look into that, but it's as good theory as any. Look, we got to make sure. Look, we're ranked again. We've moved up rankings since I've been governor by 10 spots in the U.S. News and World Report in terms of a state favorability to live in a state. In the top half of the country right now, where we were in the bottom third before. And on the health care issues, we're ranked in the top 5 in the country, Richard, in terms of health care. Do we have challenges? Yes, but we got to make sure we're investing, and I've invested hundreds of millions of dollars in healthcare since I have been governor. Going straight to the hospitals, going to the nursing homes, where I think it's very important, going into pay scales for our CNAs and other people that are doing the work every day. Yes, I think that we need to do a rates analysis on the general practitioners, and we have asked for that last year. We didn't get that passed in General Assembly last year. We're asking for it this year. I think you need a rate analysis to answer those questions and prove out some of the theories that you just talked about before we raise taxes or raise premium rates. We need to make sure we understand where we need to invest the dollars. For instance, you just had the Providence Health Center say they laid 70 people off because of Medicaid rates. But when we did the investigation, our Medicaid rates in Rhode Island are 30% higher than both Massachusetts and Connecticut. So close to 20%, 30% higher. So there's going to be areas where the storyline doesn't fit the reality. But there are situations here right now where I think we do need to raise some of our rates. National rates get done on the federal level. We're at a disadvantage a little bit with Massachusetts right now, and we're going to address that. But we're going to maintain a high level of rankings in terms of healthcare. And you can Google anytime you want. Go Google, where does Rhode Island fit in terms of its healthcare rankings? You're going to see that we're in the top 5 in most of those rankings. So we're going to hold on to that because we got some things going good, but we got some challenges that we need to address.
And guess what? We're almost out of time, and I wanted to talk about, all right.
Well, you had your own agenda, which is fine. I can come back.
I really thought we'd get there, but I mean, these are all important topics, and I'm really glad.
I can end this in 30 seconds if you want, the Rhode Island 2030 plan. Go to ri2030.com, and it's going to have 4 things in there. One, which we've talked about, is let's raise academic outcomes for young people who live in the state, and it's an all-in effort. Let's raise incomes as our second piece of the Rhode Island 2030. Let's raise incomes and personal wealth through home ownership. We need to do a lot more on home ownership, Richard, and I put that into the bond. 3, let's make sure that we're healthy to be enough to enjoy living in this great state we have the privilege of living in. And 4, which is one of the most important ingredients, let's build things, put people to work at good paying jobs, and have the things that we build, whether it's bridges, roads, or health labs, or a private investment down in Quonset, in our fisheries, at URI campus. Let's have those things that we build really pay off for decades to come.
What I'd like to do is, after the legislative session ends, and we know some of this stuff is going to come out, we'd like to have you come back and discuss this in more detail.
Really that's a really important piece to the work that we're doing, and it's baked in everything that we're doing. Every decision we're making is based on those 4 criteria.
Well, we certainly appreciate the work that you're doing. We really appreciate you having here, and I hope our audience has enjoyed this session of State of the State with Governor Dan McKee. Thank you.